Hello and welcome to Excel Highway. In today's video, I want to share with you how I created an attendance tracker split into two parts. The employee input for their clock in, clock out. It takes them about 10 seconds and they can do it on their mobile phone. And the second part is where you analyze the timesheet on a centralized file. All you need for this is a few minutes to set it up. It's 100% free of charge. If this sounds interesting to you, stick around and I'll walk you through all the steps. Today's video is sponsored by Connecteam. Here's a breakdown of the process. Using Google Forms, we create a simple form for all your employees. Every time they click on the form, they can select clock in, clock out, which customer, and if they have any remarks. This form is connected to a Google Sheets that captures all of the responses here, and it has a few helping sheets that eventually gives you an analysis of what's going on. Another sheet that you can connect to that is an employee timesheet view, which will only show you a specific employee, only their information, and I do recommend that you password protect the sheets so employees can't change them. They also have the pivot table over there. To create this process, all you need is a Google ID. Setting it up is really easy, and I assume that you have that with you. So let's start with creating the input form. It's going to look like this in the end. Very easy. Go over here to your I'm using Chrome. So go over here next to your name. You have those Google apps. On the bottom, click on Forms. Right, this is the first screen. Click on blank form, untitled form, so you can just change that to attendance or timesheet input with a little description. Please fill the form when you start or finish a shift. Then basically we have a few questions. The first one is going to be clock in, clock out. Multiple choice because we want two choices. And we only want to be able to have these two options, either clock in or clock out. And I want this to be a required answer because that's the whole point of this form. Next, I'm going to add a customer. This could be also a location, something like that. And here I would also put a multiple choice that you can decide. And as I did before, I can just put a few locations, hospital, camp, I don't know, online, whatever you want. And you can also add an other and fill that as a required field. And the last question should be place for some remarks, and go ahead and select the paragraph so people have a long place to communicate what they wanted. This is not required, of course. So that's pretty much it. On top of that, I added in the themes a header. So you go over here, you can of course upload your own, and I just took one of these. Which one was it? Yeah, that one. I just put that in. You can of course change the text styles and the size of the font. You can change the color, so it's a bluish color. That's pretty much, the form is ready. Next, you go over here to the settings. Make sure in the responses part, first of all, I don't want to restrict it to my email because then it's not going to work. But if you have a company email, so that might work, but I just take that off. And also make sure this one is not limited to one response because you want people to keep using the same form over and over again. Last part is the responses. You click on this link to sheets and then it asks you to create or select. I just clicked on create, and that will create a new response sheet. It's going to look like this. Already takes your questions, and the first sheet looks like this with the form responses. So that's the first part, very easy. Create the form, link it to a Google Sheets. Today's video is sponsored by Connecteam. Connecteam is an app that simplifies all of your business operation management needs. It's a perfect solution to manage, train, and communicate with your non-desk employees. Here I'm using Connecteam's desktop view, which is especially useful for the manager, and I have access to all my employees' clock in, clock out, vacations, etc. I'll jump into the time clock feature, access the clock, and it shows me today's information. I want to go to the timesheets, and I can select a range from the beginning of the month. I can see the breakdown of my employees, hours, regular hours, overtime, paid time off, and total pay. Keep in mind that while you're looking at your jobs analysis, you can build this in a way that's easy for you to manage your business, either by customer, by location, by project, by position, etc. That makes it really easy for you to see where your money and hours are spent. Here's how it looks like from the employee's perspective. Really easy. You go into the time clock. It's going to look for your location. You click on Start Shift, select the job. That's it. Once you're done, click on End Shift. And that's it. You're done. I can drill down into a specific employee's information per day. I can see what he was working on, and I can even delete the entry if I want. I can adjust the hours. I can add a manager note. I can look at notes that employee wrote, which is a great way just to communicate as a team. Now, assuming everything is okay with the timesheets, I can just approve the hours, and after the hours are approved, they can be exported to your payrolling system for paychecks processing. So very nice, very easy way to look at your employees' information. If you want to adjust your employees' wages, you just have to go to the profile. There you go, the profile. You have the payroll sheet, and you can define what is their hourly wage and if they're working per hour or globally. It's important to mention that you can also define a GPS tracking. So you can see you have different options that you can define, and if you toggle this means that the user must enable GPS that's going to be added to your tracking device. I also want to mention that it's really easy to export the information in the timesheets and the payroll to external softwares with integrations or into Excel or CSV files that you can use for your accounting. I really recommend that you use Connecteam for all your daily operation needs. Please use my affiliate link in the description. You can start now for free. Now I'll show you how it looks like when they fill it out on their mobile. After they filled out a form on the mobile, you start getting the responses. You get the responses over here in Google Forms. You can go over here and start looking at the information, which is not really helpful in this case because I want to use the clock in and clock out and see what the actual time is. So over here in the form responses, whenever you add a new line, a new form response, that's just going to add another line here and keep going and going. So these are what I did already, and you can see that each input has a timestamp. So you don't need, that's why in the timesheet you only need them to select clock in or out. You don't need them to select the date, because once they click the submit button, that date and time is already captured in the timestamp. So you have those columns. Then I've added a sheet called data. In the data sheet, I'm basically pulling the information from the form response. I do it very simply using the offset function. So offset, if you're not familiar, is a very helpful function that can pull data from other, well, even within the sheet, but other sheets, and you can do it very dynamically like I did over here. And I'm using offset starting in the first cell over here. I'm going to be using offset rows, so how many rows going down, so it's the row number minus 1, then count A, which will return the number of rows, and then 5, which is the width, and that will always give me the exact same thing. So if I put something here, it'll immediately appear over here. The reason I like to use offset and not just equal is that if you start deleting things or whatever, it messes up. I always like to use offset, moving things between the sheets. So those 5 columns are what you have here that are generated automatically. And I've added 3 helping columns that's going to help me generate the time spent on a specific customer or specific user. So clock in, clock out, all it does, checks if the name over here of the answer is clock in or clock out. If it's clock in, it's equal to the timestamp. If not, it's 0. So you see it differentiates clock in, clock out. And date is just the integer value of the time, which basically removes the time. So you have a unified date. All right, pretty simple. Then I'm going to take these columns and generate a pivot table like so. Let me just show you how I did it. So I'm generating a pivot table, and then I have here the date, I have the employee address, and I have the customer. So those are the 3 fields. I'm going to remove the totals so it looks like this. I'm going to repeat the date, so I always have everything. Also here in the email, so make sure that every line is committed. And then I'm going to add, what did I add? The clock in, clock out, and time. So I'm going to add as values clock in the values, clock out, and you can see by default it's not giving me the answer that I wanted. I'm going to switch it to sum. Even though it's a date. I'm going to go over here, data, format, number, and going to change it to a date. You know what, even you can change that actually to a date time. Change the width a bit. I like to remove that. Clock out. Now what I want to do now is basically get the value. What's the time? Now I can do that, right? I can do this minus this, but I don't want to be reliant on the number of rows. I want this to be dynamically done, and I can do that. I can do that by adding a calculated field. I'm going to click over here on values, add calculated field, and in the formula it's going to be clock out, which is minus clock in, with I don't know how to say that little appendix or little the one next to enter. Once you do that, and let's change that to a number, you get a value, but the value is actually the portion of the day. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply that by 24, and then I get hours. So from 6 to 5, that's 11 hours. That makes sense. You see this number, which is kind of scary. That's because you don't have a clock out, which is good because we can handle that later. The next field that I want to add a overtime. So what I'm going to do, again, I'm going to use that one, but I'm going to say a max between 0 and this number, which is the time, minus 8, assuming 8 is our overtime. What this does is if the value is lower than 8, as in like 6 hours, then the result is negative and the max will give us a 0 number. Again, over here, use that as a number, and this could be time, and this would be overtime. And that's what I have over here, and you can see same results. So that's how I constructed the pivot table, which is very important for the next step. The next step is the data errors. Data errors is going to show you exactly those cases where something's not right. This could be that someone clicked on clock in instead of clock out, or the wrong customer, and that's just going to populate all the cases where the numbers don't make sense. And the way this is built is very simple. I'm going to use a simple filter. So filter on the pivot table, all right, ranges A through G because I want to show the entire list. And what I'm using is, this is basically, the condition is OR. If you have a plus and the brackets in between, so that's OR. So I'm telling Google Sheets, so look at column F in two cases. Either column F is negative or column F is more than 24 hours. Why? Negative, of course, means that the clock out is before the clock in. Doesn't make sense. And above 24 hours means that it's more than a day. And this cannot be more than a day because this is supposed to be a daily event, right? You have the date. So this is going to pick up all the cases that you need to go ahead and fix. And to go ahead and fix is just to go over here to the form response and make adjustments as you see fit. So for example, if I change this to me and go over here, I expect to see issues, right? I see that on the 28th I have on my clock in, I have a clock out, no clock in, and vice versa for Jim. So obviously I have a mistake here. I have to go and check, and then I say, this needs to be Jim. That's right. That doesn't make sense. If I go ahead and change that, then that goes away. So I think that's going to be a helpful report for you to make sure that all the information is accurate. Next, I'm first going to go to the employee database, because here's a very simple database. You have your 3 employee emails, their name, their regular wage and overtime wage, and I'm going to use that for the last sheet, which is the team dashboard. So in the team dashboard, the first column is the email address. I'm using unique over here to just get those names. I don't want everything else, all the blanks and everything. I'm going to use these 3 columns, simple VLOOKUPs. So VLOOKUP, this value, over here to the employee database, 4 columns, and every time different columns. So I'm going to pull the name, the regular wage, and the overtime wage, right? I'm going to have 3 columns, simple VLOOKUP. If you're not familiar with VLOOKUP, 1 second to explain. VLOOKUP, it's going to pull data from a second table based on the value that you're looking for. So I'm looking for the value A6, starting from column A over here, all through D, because I want to extract basically second, third, or fourth column. And that's exactly what I have here. Then I have basically 2 identical little tables. This should be dragged. So this would be today, and this would be some sort of date range. So today, this equals today, and I'm just going to leave the formulas because you'll see in a second how it's being calculated. This basically shows you the number of shifts, the total time, regular overtime hour, and expected pay for today. It's a good thing that I owe myself $50 million. That's going to be tough to pay off. So how is it being calculated? Number of shifts, I'm using count ifs with a few checks. Count ifs basically counts the number of rows that fit the criteria that you define. So first of all, I'm looking at pivot table A. That's the date column. I'll show you. I want it to be more or equal to the from field and less or equal to the to. So basically it needs to match that range. Then I'm checking if pivot table B, which is the email address, equals whatever I have over here. So you can see column A, the date, column B, the email address. So that's going to give me the number. So you can see I have 1 shift. You can see it over here. It's this shift. If I would have said yesterday, I would have got different results. Obviously, this is the error that I see, that I don't have a clock out. And that's why it appears over here. And of course, that was going to be fixed as the day moves on. The same thing for the date range, same formulas, everything is the same. Just that we have the range has 2 values now, not the same one. Now that is for count ifs. The total time, very similar to countifs. It sums rows based on criterias. Here I'm summing row or column F, which is where I have the time. And it's the same criteria basically. It's exactly like the countif. Range of dates and the email name. So that gives me the total time between the ranges. The regular hours, first I'm going to calculate the overtime hours because that's what I have over there. So it's the same as the total time, just on the overtime hours that I calculated over here. And the regular hours is the difference between them. Expected pay is sum product. Sum product is a function that multiplies arrays. So it's going to multiply, in this case, C through D, 6 through L and M. And I have dollar signs on C and D because I wanted to use the same formula between them and just change the regular and hours and overtime hours. What sum product will do, it will multiply C times G plus D times H6. That's what it does. So it's, instead of writing C equals C times G plus D times H, which is relatively simple, but imagine you had 10 columns, you could use sum product, which is very, very easy to use. That is the team dashboard. That is what the timesheet responses or the master file that the manager will use. It's going to show them. It's going to show them. Let me delete that. It's going to show you all the information in this way that has clock in, clock out, any data errors, overall situation that you can understand how much you should be paying. You can of course add sums to this or just look at the sums over here, and the employee database where you manage some information. The last part that I have here is the employee timesheet view. Now the employee timesheet view is what I use for allowing your employees to actually look at their information in a more centralized way, other than just asking you, okay, how did you reach 100 hours? I mean, I obviously worked 200. What's going on? So you can create an employee timesheet view that will be specific to each person, and you set it up in a way that it's going to pull the data over here, the data table, but just for a specific email. So they don't have access to other people's information, which is obviously personal information. And to do that, I'm going to use what's called import range. Import range, as you can imagine, is a function that will import information from another source. And it's very powerful because you can use it in Google Sheets on files that you don't have access or that are closed. As long as the same person is the owner of both files, in this case it's me or the manager that you'll be setting this up, you can do this. You cannot import a range from a file that someone else is the owner, which is a good thing because it's supposed to be protected. So how I set it up, it's very simple. I like to use parameters on the side instead of messing it up with the function. Import range has two arguments, the URL of the spreadsheet and the range that you want to pull. So you see in the first case I'm referencing A5, which is the URL. You just click here, copy and paste over here. That's it. That's how you get the URL. And here I put the sheet name, which is data, with a check mark at the end. That's just how you build the function. And the range is A through H, which is over here, A through H. Okay. The last bit is the filter range, which we'll get to. That is column B. So that's how you need to set it up. You do it once, that's it. You can do it for everyone. All you need to do is change the email address. So if I now change it to, get out the way, to Jim, I'm going to get different results immediately. So you'd have one file for each employee, just change the email address and you get different information. How does it work? Import range on its own will just return the entire table. I'm adding a filter before that because I only want to see a specific email. That's why I have the second range. So I'm pulling the table and I'm using filter on column B equals A3, which is the email address. And that's how you get only those lines. And as I wrote here, password protect the sheets so employees can't change this. Okay, just, data, protect sheet and ranges, add for the entire sheet or for the range, whatever you want, set permissions, only you, right? And that's it. Once you do that, then only you can access this sheet and none of your employees. So you'd build that and you'd build this as well, and that's it. You're good to go. So on this table, you can now build another pivot table just for them to see, similar to what we had before with the overtime and time. You see the same function, clock out minus clock in times 24 and max. So that's how you get the time and overtime, so they could see what they clocked in, what they clocked out, and they can send you a message, look, I made a mistake, it's supposed to be 5, or I clocked in instead of clocked out, or whatever, or I forgot to clock in. Or they would just send you like an email or something, and you could just manually update the form response. Let's quickly recap what we reviewed today. An attendance tracker using Google Forms to collect employees' input, and Google Sheets to collect and analyze the data. This is a free setup for your business that you can start using today, all on your own, and all you need is to follow the video and have a Google ID. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next videos. Feel free to comment if you have any questions or thoughts. Have a good one.